Dear students, I welcome you to this lecture. In this lecture, we will discuss the critical evaluation of Neo-Marxism. We will also look at the criticisms Antonio Gramsci and Louis Althusser faced for their works on hegemony and ideology respectively. Further, we will also assess the significance of the Miliband-Polanczas debate on the nature of the state in modern capitalist societies. The objectives of this lecture are to study the features of and criticisms against Neo-Marxism, to understand the criticisms against the works of Gramsci and Althusser, to revisit the discussions about the Miliband-Polanczas debate, and to appreciate the significance of Neo-Marxism despite all criticisms. Dear students, before starting on the journey of criticism, let us first begin with a detailed discussion of what Neo-Marxism is. Neo-Marxism is a term used to describe a variety of intellectual and political movements that have emerged as adaptations or reinterpretations of classical Marxist theory. While traditional Marxism focuses primarily on economic class struggle and the role of capitalism, Neo-Marxism broadens the scope of Marxism to include issues of culture, identity, and power dynamics. Neo-Marxism's roots can be traced back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries when thinkers like George Lukács, a Hungarian Marxist philosopher, began reinterpreting classical Marxism to address questions of culture and ideology. Classical Marxism primarily focused on economic class struggle and the role of capitalism in shaping society. However, some Marxist thinkers began to recognize that culture, ideology, and other non-economic factors also played significant roles in maintaining power structures in contemporary capitalist societies. Neo-Marxism emerged as a way to incorporate these aspects into Marxist analysis and save it from criticisms of economic reductionism. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw significant changes in modern society, including the rise of consumer culture, mass media, and new forms of oppression beyond economic exploitation. Neo-Marxism aimed to address these changes and adapt Marxist theory to the evolving realities of the time. The original predictions of revolutionary uprisings in developed capitalist societies had not materialized by the mid-20th century. This led some Marxists to question the applicability of classical Marxist theory and seek new ways to understand why capitalism persisted and how social change could be achieved. Consequently, Neo-Marxism developed in response to perceived limitations in classical Marxism's explanatory power, especially in addressing issues related to culture, ideology, and non-economic forms of oppression. Some main characteristics and concepts associated with Neo-Marxism include cultural critique. Neo-Marxists often emphasize the role of culture, ideology, and media in shaping social reality and maintaining power structures. They argue that the ruling class maintains dominance not only through economic means but also by controlling cultural narratives and popular symbols. Hegemony. Neo-Marxists build upon Antonio Gramsci's concept of cultural hegemony. This refers to the dominant group's ability to shape societal norms, values, and beliefs to maintain its control over other social groups. Structuralism. Neo-Marxist approaches often draw on structuralist theories, emphasizing the importance of underlying structures and systems that influence and determine social outcomes. Critique of capitalism. Like classical Marxism, Neo-Marxism retains a critique of capitalism, but it expands this critique to include cultural and social aspects that maintain inequality and exploitation. Post-colonialism and dependency theory. Some neo-Marxist scholars incorporate post-colonial and dependency theory perspectives, highlighting colonialism's ongoing effects and the unequal relationships between developed and developing countries. Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School is often associated with neo-Marxism. Scholars like Theodor Adorno, Max Horkheimer, and Herbert Marcuse developed critical theories that addressed the role of culture, media, and authoritarianism in contemporary capitalist societies. Due to the association with various concepts, the term neo-Marxism is somewhat contested and can have different meanings depending on the context. Some critics use the term to refer to a broader range of leftist thought, while others use it disapprovingly to label any ideas they see as radical or Marxist influenced. As with any complex theoretical framework, there are many variations and interpretations within neo-Marxism, and it is subject to ongoing debate and development. Probably the most prominent figures associated with neo-Marxism are Antonio Gramsci for his idea on hegemony and Louis Althusser for his work on ideology. Let us quickly look at their works and the criticisms they faced. Let us begin with Antonio Gramsci. Antonio Gramsci's most influential work is his Prison Notebooks, written while he was imprisoned by the fascist regime in Italy since 1926. He developed his ideas on hegemony, intellectuals, and culture in these notebooks. One of Gramsci's most significant contributions is the concept of cultural hegemony. He argued that ruling classes maintain their dominance not only through coercive force but also by shaping the cultural norms, values, and ideas that society accepts as common sense. In this way, the ruling class influences the worldview of the masses, making their domination appear natural and inevitable. Gramsci's ideas and contributions have been widely respected. But like any prominent thinker, he also faced criticisms from various quarters. Gramsci's writings, particularly his prison notebooks, are known for their complexity and depth. Critics argue that his ideas can be challenging to understand and interpret, which might limit their accessibility and practical application. Some critics suggest that Gramsci's concepts such as cultural hegemony can be ambiguous and difficult to define precisely. This can lead to differing interpretations and debates over their meanings. Gramsci's ideas are often based on his prison notebooks, written during his imprisonment, and remain unfinished and fragmentary due to his sudden death in 1937 while serving his sentence. Critics argue that these writings might not provide a comprehensive and systematic framework for his ideas. Some scholars have raised concerns about the applicability of Gramsci's ideas in non-Western contexts. Gramsci's ideas were developed within a specific historical and cultural context, and they might not fully address the experiences and struggles of non-Western societies. They argue that his concepts might not fully capture the nuances of power dynamics in diverse cultural and historical settings. While cultural hegemony is a central concept in Gramsci's work, some critics argue that he may have overemphasized the role of culture at the expense of economic and material factors in shaping power dynamics. Critics contend that Gramsci's focus on cultural and ideological dimensions might downplay the significance of economic determinants in maintaining social hierarchies and oppression. Some critics argue that Gramsci's ideas of cultural hegemony and class struggle might not adequately address broader forms of oppression and exploitation that do not fit neatly into a class-based framework. Critics also suggest that Gramsci's focus on ruling class domination might overshadow the role of agency and resistance by individuals and subordinate classes. This could lead to perceiving the working class as passive recipients of dominant ideologies with no agency of their own. However, it is crucial to recognize that criticisms of Gramsci's ideas do not negate their importance and influence. Instead, these critiques contribute to ongoing discussions and debates within academia and activism, helping to refine and adapt his concepts to contemporary contexts and challenges. His work continues to inspire scholars and activists worldwide, offering insights into the complexities of power, culture, and social change. Gramsci's ideas have been foundational to critical theory, cultural studies, and post-colonial theory. His emphasis on the importance of cultural struggle and the role of intellectuals in shaping society has made his ideas relevant in various contexts. His focus on power dynamics, ideology, and the role of culture in maintaining domination has been influential in understanding how social change and resistance occur. Dear students, let us now look at Louis Althusser. Louis Althusser was a French Marxist philosopher who contributed to structuralist and post-structuralist thought. Althusser is described as a structural Marxist. Structural Marxism recognizes the importance of ideology and culture in reproducing and maintaining social structures. It explores how ideological and cultural systems interact with the economic base to shape individual and collective consciousness to influence social practices. One of the most significant contributions of Althusser to modern political philosophy has been his critical analysis of classical Marxism. Althusser's work focused on critiquing and reinterpreting Marxist theory, particularly concerning issues of ideology, politics, and the role of the state. Althusser is most famous for developing the notions of ideological state apparatuses and repressive state apparatuses. He argued that alongside the repressive state apparatuses such as the police and military, there exists ideological state apparatuses such as education, media, and religion that disseminate ideologies to maintain social order and class domination. Althusser's concept of ideological state apparatuses has generated both appreciation and criticism. Here are some common criticisms faced by him. Critics contend that Althusser's notion of ideology is overly negative, portraying it solely as a tool of domination and manipulation. They argue that ideology can also be a source of meaning, identity, and social cohesion. However, Althusser's conception does not allow for any positive imagination of ideology. Critics have pointed out that Althusser's framework might not fully account for cultural variations in how ideology operates in different societies. Critics have also criticized Althusser's concept of ideological state apparatuses for presenting a somewhat static view of power dynamics, where ideology is solely about maintaining social order and control rather than a dynamic force that can evolve and adapt to changing narratives about social justice. Althusser's original conception of ideological state apparatuses primarily includes institutions like education, media, religion, and family. Critics argue that this list might be incomplete, overlooking other vital institutions or discourses that shape ideology and maintain power structures. Some critics suggest that Althusser's focus on ideology might overshadow the material conditions and economic relations that influence power dynamics and social structures. Further, Althusser's distinction between repressive state apparatuses and ideological state apparatuses has been criticized for oversimplifying the relationship between the state and ideology. Critics believe the state can also wield ideological power through repressive state apparatuses. For example, the army can help promote and circulate the ideologies of nationalism and homogenizing beliefs of one nation, one identity, as well as narratives about sacrifice, discipline, brotherhood, national unity, and national heroism. Critics argue that individuals and groups can actively engage with, reinterpret, and resist dominant ideologies. But Althusser's theory might downplay individual and collective agency in the face of ideology. Some critics say that Althusser's framework does not provide a precise mechanism for explaining how social change or revolutionary transformation can occur if ideology is so pervasive and influential. Despite all criticisms, Althusser's ideas have significantly impacted various fields, including philosophy, political science, sociology, and cultural studies. Althusser was a committed Marxist, he sought to re-examine and refine Marx's ideas, challenging what he perceived as limitations and inconsistencies in traditional interpretations of Marxism. In his ways, he has been instrumental in reviving and restructuring Marxism. Dear students, let us now revise the Miliband-Poulantzas debate. The Miliband-Poulantzas debate was between two sets of ideas embodied in the figures of two prominent left intellectuals, Ralph Miliband, a British sociologist, and Nikos Poulantzas, a French sociologist heavily influenced by Louis Althusser. Miliband published a book in 1969, The State in Capitalist Society, outlining the instrumentalist theory of the capitalist state. Poulantzas published a detailed critique of Miliband in the New Left Review called The Problem of the Capitalist State in 1969. In this review, Poulantzas set out his own structural theory of the state. Miliband responded to Poulantzas in the New Left Review in 1970, accusing him of relying on structural superdeterminism, that is, an exaggerated concern with the structural constraints on state autonomy and ignoring the role of empirical material in developing a critique of the state. He says that Poulantzas goes much too far in dismissing the nature of the state elite. The structural constraints of the system are so compelling as to turn those who run the state into mere functionaries of policies imposed upon them by the system. Finally, Miliband says that Poulantzas was mistaken in treating ideological state apparatuses as part of the state in its narrow sense as opposed to the political system more generally. Miliband says that economism re-enters Poulantzas' analysis through the back door in the guise of the inevitable class character of state power. Miliband concludes that the structuralism of Poulantzas prevents us from understanding and analyzing the relative autonomy of the state. The Miliband-Poulantzas debate generated a lot of scholarship on the nature of the state. Ernesto Laclau, an Argentinian social theorist familiar with Althusserian structuralism and aware of the complexities of political struggles, attacked both writers because they had made complementary methodological errors. While Miliband was seen faltering in not constructing his own theory and testing it against other theories, Poulantzas had made the mistake of creating his own theory but neglecting to demonstrate its superiority on empirical grounds. The idea of relative autonomy of the state was much disputed in the 1970s and 1980s. Essentially, this topic concerned the relative freedom of the state or state managers to pursue policies that conflict with the immediate interests of the dominant economic class without becoming so autonomous that they could also undermine the latter's long-term economic and political interests. This was one of the key themes in the Poulantzas-Miliband debate, which took place between a claimed structural determinist and a supposed instrumentalist, respectively. Neither characterization is accurate, but it remains to explain why the two protagonists could not grasp and depict their opponent's stance within the controversy. The state is such a complex theoretical subject and so complicated and empirical one that no single theoretical approach can fully capture and explain its complexities. The resulting contradiction was reflected in the debate between Poulantzas and Miliband on the nature, form and functions of the state and on the best way to analyze these issues. Indeed, their mutual critiques became a key reference point in Anglophone discussions on the state during the 1970s and 1980s and were also taken up in many other contexts. Let us now discuss some of the broader criticisms against Neo-Marxism. Criticisms against Neo-Marxism come from various angles, reflecting diverse perspectives and concerns. Some critics argue that neo-Marxists misunderstand or misrepresent economic concepts and dynamics, leading to flawed analysis of capitalist systems and their effects. Critics question whether neo-Marxist theories offer any viable economic alternatives to capitalism. They argue that critiques of capitalism are more compelling when accompanied by well-developed alternatives. Critics suggest that neo-Marxist theories often provide critiques of existing systems but lack clear and practical solutions for addressing social issues and achieving meaningful change. Some critics claim that neo-Marxism's emphasis on cultural and ideological factors can lead to a reductionist view of society, where everything is seen through the lens of class struggle and cultural domination. This oversimplification may neglect the importance of other social dynamics. Critics contend that neo-Marxism's treatment of culture can be reductionist, failing to capture the nuanced ways culture shapes and is shaped by society. Some critics argue that neo-Marxism's emphasis on universal class struggle may not adequately address the complexities of diverse cultural contexts and the distinct histories of different societies. Critics also say that neo-Marxism's focus on class conflict and power struggles can undermine the potential for cooperation and collaboration between other social groups. Further, some critics contend that neo-Marxism sometimes overlooks the role of individual agency and choices in shaping social outcomes. This can lead to a deterministic view that discounts the capacity for change and innovation at the individual level. However, we must remember that criticisms of neo-Marxism vary widely and not all critiques apply to all forms of neo-Marxist thought. Additionally, like any complex ideological framework, neo-Marxism has also evolved over time, and different thinkers and schools of thought within it may address or adapt to some of these criticisms. Let us now look at the significance of neo-Marxism. The significance of neo-Marxism today lies in its continued influence on critical social theory, cultural analysis, and discussions of power dynamics within contemporary society. While it may not be as dominant as other ideologies, neo-Marxist ideas continue to shape academic debates, social movements, and political discourse in several ways. Neo-Marxism's emphasis on culture, ideology, and media has provided a framework for understanding how cultural narratives and popular symbols shape societal norms and maintain power structures. This is particularly relevant in an era of rapid information dissemination and media saturation. Neo-Marxist insights have contributed to media analysis, helping researchers and critics understand how media ownership, representation, and narratives influence public opinion and reinforce dominant ideologies. Neo-Marxist ideas challenge the dominant neoliberal paradigm by highlighting the negative consequences of unregulated capitalism and promoting more equitable and socially responsible economic systems. As economic inequality remains a pressing issue, neo-Marxist critiques of capitalism offer insights into the effects of global economic systems on different social classes and regions. Neo-Marxist concepts continue to contribute to the debates about the nature of power, authority, and resistance in society, enriching discussions about democratic governance and social change. Neo-Marxist ideas have influenced various social movements advocating for justice, human rights, and systemic change. They provide a framework for understanding how power operates and how structural change can be pursued. Neo-Marxist perspectives have influenced feminist and gender studies by offering insights into how economic systems intersect with gender-based oppression. Due to the multifaceted nature of neo-Marxism, its interpretations can vary depending on the cultural, political, and academic context. While neo-Marxism is not the only framework for understanding society, it has contributed valuable insights and tools for analyzing complex power dynamics and advocating for social transformation. Dear students, let us now conclude this lecture. Neo-Marxism emerged as a way to update and expand Marxist theory to better account for the complexities of contemporary society, including the roles of culture, identity, and global dynamics. It sought to address the limitations of classical Marxism while maintaining a critical perspective on capitalism and power structures. Neo-Marxism's multidimensional analysis allows a more comprehensive understanding of societal issues beyond narrow economic considerations. Neo-Marxism continues to be a prominent strand of critical theory within academic disciplines such as sociology, cultural studies, and political science, influencing research, scholarship, and classroom discussions. So dear students, I hope you enjoyed this lecture. See you soon with another lecture on modern political philosophy. Till then, take care and goodbye.